My name is Isabel, and I'm 33 years old. For 7 years, I was married to Richard, a man everyone in our circle considered the ideal partner. We lived in a comfortable house on a tree-lined street where neighbors waved and children played. Our days followed familiar patterns, predictable rhythms that felt safe, if not exactly exciting. To anyone looking in from the outside, we seemed stable, content even. But everything shifted the afternoon Richard's cousin Adrian arrived to stay with us for a few weeks. It began innocently enough. Richard got caught in back-to-back meetings at work, so he asked if I could pick Adrian up from the train station. When I spotted him in the crowded terminal, something in my chest tightened before I could process why. Adrian was magnetic, tall, athletic, with an easy confidence that Richard had never possessed. We greeted each other with a casual embrace, and I felt something spark that I had no right to feel. During the drive back to the house, he told me about his work as a travel photographer. He'd just returned from spending 3 months in Peru, and his stories were filled with vivid energy. So different from Richard's evening complaints about spreadsheets and conference calls. That first night over dinner, Richard launched into his usual monologue about workplace politics. Stories I'd heard countless variations of before. But my attention kept drifting across the table to Adrian, who would catch my eye and hold my gaze just a fraction too long. I excused myself early, claiming fatigue, but really I lay awake in the dark, wrestling with a question I shouldn't have been entertaining. Why am I feeling this pull, and what happens if I let myself acknowledge it? Part 2. Lines crossed. Over the next several days, Adrian seemed to find reasons to be near me. Accidental brushes of hands in the kitchen. Soft smiles meant only for me when Richard wasn't watching, and I felt something awaken inside me, something that had been dormant for years. One evening, Richard had to work late again, and Adrian suggested we play cards in the den. I admitted I didn't really know how to play poker properly. "Then I'll teach you," he said with that easy smile. As he leaned over to explain the rules, positioning himself close behind my chair, I felt warmth flood through me. His breath brushed against my neck as he pointed out which cards to keep, and I could barely concentrate on the game. When I turned to ask a question, we were suddenly face to face, barely inches apart. Neither of us moved away. The kiss happened slowly at first, then deeper, more urgent. It was wrong. I knew it with absolute certainty, but I didn't pull back. For days afterward, that kiss replayed in my mind like a forbidden film I couldn't stop watching. Our interactions grew more charged. Every stolen moment felt like something I'd been starving for without realizing it. One evening during another of Richard's late nights, Adrian asked if I wanted to get some air. We walked through the neighborhood with no particular destination, eventually finding ourselves at a small park with a pond. Moonlight shimmered across the water's surface, and the moment felt suspended outside of normal time. "Do you ever feel trapped?" Adrian asked quietly. Every single day, I heard myself admit. He looked at me with that same intensity from the card game, and I leaned forward before my rational mind could intervene. Another kiss. More reckless this time, impossible to stop. When we returned home, Richard was already there, earlier than expected. We pretended everything was normal, but my heart raced through every minute of conversation. The secret encounters continued, touches in passing. Stolen kisses when Richard stepped out of the room. Adrian even showed me how to make his grandmother's recipe for empanadas one afternoon, guiding my hands the same way he had during our card game. "I know we shouldn't be doing this," he whispered. "I know," I replied. Yet neither of us stopped. Part 3. The unraveling. One Saturday morning, Richard asked if I wanted to run errands with him. I told him I was exhausted and would stay home to rest. After he left, I took a long shower, letting the hot water ease the tension I'd been carrying. But suddenly, the curtain pulled back. It was Adrian. "Isabel," he said, his voice low. "I heard the water running. I couldn't stay away." His eyes traveled over me, and my breath caught. I should have told him to leave immediately, but the word never came. He stepped into the shower, fully clothed at first, then quickly shed his clothes, pulled me close under the cascade of water. Everything happened in a rush of heat and desire and abandon. It felt intoxicating, overwhelming, like nothing I could resist even if I'd tried. Afterward, the memory clung to me, impossible to shake. But everything came crashing down the morning Richard confronted me. He stood in our bedroom doorway holding my phone, his hand trembling. Open to a message from Adrian. "Did you find what I left for you in the linen closet? Can't stop thinking about yesterday?" Richard's voice was cold. "What happened yesterday, Isabel?" He dragged me to the bathroom, threw open the cabinet under the sink, and pulled out an expensive bottle of bath oil Adrian had hidden there for me. "What happened in this room?" Richard's voice shook with fury and hurt. I panicked. I lied. Said it was nothing, just a thoughtful gift. He didn't believe a single word. Richard stormed out of the house, and I collapsed. I ran to Adrian's room, heart pounding, telling him that Richard suspected something. "We'll just be more careful," Adrian said calmly. But I didn't realize our time for being careful had already run out, because that evening, when we met at the park again, I felt the weight of someone's gaze on us. When Adrian kissed me, I opened my eyes and froze. Richard stood at the edge of the clearing, watching everything unfold. His face showed devastation so complete it physically hurt to see. "Isabel." "Adrian," he said, his voice breaking. "How could you do this?" Adrian tried to speak, but Richard cut him off. "Don't. There's nothing either of you could say. I saw everything. Both of you need to get out, now." He made us pack that same night, demanded our keys, slammed the door on 7 years of marriage. Part 4, the aftermath. Adrian and I found ourselves in a cheap motel at first, eventually scraping together enough to rent a rundown apartment on the edge of town. I had to find work immediately because Richard had been our primary income. The sudden shift in lifestyle hit me like a physical blow. Everything felt harder, smaller, more precarious. But Adrian was there at first, comforting, supportive. Then he began to change. He grew distant, less affectionate, less present. The energy that had drawn me to him seemed to evaporate like it had never existed. One afternoon, I came home to find him packing his duffel bag. "Are you leaving?" I asked, my voice cracking. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Isabel, I never expected this to become permanent. I thought whatever we had would end when my visit was over." My chest tightened painfully. "So it meant nothing to you?" "I care about you," he said carefully, "but I'm not the future you're looking for." And with that simple statement, he walked out the door. Days later, the divorce papers arrived. My hands trembled as I signed them, officially ending the life I'd known. I had lost my marriage, lost the man I'd destroyed it for, lost the comfortable existence I'd taken for granted, and for weeks I cried, deep, wrenching sobs that left me exhausted and hollow. Part 5, rebuilding, but slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild. I learned to live alone, to pay my own bills, to make decisions without consulting anyone, to sit with my mistakes instead of running from them. I took a job at a small marketing firm. The work was challenging but gave me purpose, gave me something to focus on besides my regrets. I started therapy, finally dealing with the unhappiness I'd been avoiding for years in my marriage. Understanding that while my choices had been wrong, they come from a place of profound disconnection I hadn't known how to address. Eventually, I saved enough to move to a better apartment, made new friends who knew nothing about my past, developed new routines that belonged only to me. Slowly, very slowly, I became stronger. I never heard from Adrian again, and honestly, that silence became its own form of closure. What we'd had was never real. It was escapism, fantasy, the dangerous thrill of the forbidden. Epilogue. Moving forward. Today, 3 years later, I'm no longer running from my past. I've accepted it, learned from it, integrated it into who I am now. I've apologized to Richard, though I don't expect or need his forgiveness. The apology was for me as much as for him, an acknowledgement of the pain I caused. I've learned that betrayal doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens when we're too afraid to face what's broken, when we seek easy escapes instead of doing hard work. I've learned that the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it, where you tend it, where you do the daily work of nurturing what matters. I date now, but differently. With honesty. With clear communication about what I want and what I can offer. With respect for boundaries and commitments. I'm building a life I'm proud of. Not the life I had, which looked good on the surface but felt empty underneath. And not the desperate escape I chased with Adrian, which was never sustainable. This life is harder earned, more honest, more real, because sometimes the hardest betrayals, the ones we inflict on ourselves and others, lead to the deepest transformations. I'm not the same person I was when Adrian arrived at that train station. I've been broken down and rebuilt, and the person I've become is stronger, wiser, and more authentic than the one I used to be. Life moves forward whether we're ready or not, and so do I. Every single day I choose to move forward, not with pride in what I did, but with understanding of why I did it. Not with excuses, but with accountability. Not with regret that paralyzes, but with lessons that propel me toward becoming someone I can respect. The affair didn't give me what I thought I wanted, but its aftermath gave me something more valuable, the chance to discover who I truly am when everything comfortable is stripped away. And that person, imperfect and flawed as she is someone I'm finally learning to accept.